Have you ever wondered what chaos looks like on a daily basis? Because I'm pretty sure this is it. Welcome back, guys. On today's episode of Why the Heck Do I Do This? I'm going to be taking you through the 124 books that I read in 2024. I had been hoping that I would end at 125 or 126. There are two books that I did not finish. Not that I didn't want to finish them. They're not officially a DNF. I just ran out of time. But 124, that's not bad. So I put a lot of thought into how I was going to format this. If I was going to make this a super long video and give really detailed reviews, but I think the best way to go about doing this is I have grouped them by star rating, and we're going to go through them that way, which will be interesting because that's going to break up some series. I feel like this is the point where I should tell you that as I rate books, I rate with my heart. I don't have a set criteria for, okay, this is what makes me rate a book 3 stars, or what makes me rate a book 4 stars, or 4.5. I rate with my heart. I rate what feels right. So just because something might have a lower star rating does not necessarily mean that I didn't enjoy it. You remember what I said about chaos, right? But we're gonna start with the DNFs. I DNF'd 3 books this year. The first of which was The Princess of Seldove. I just couldn't get behind this one. The premise and the intro really grabbed me, and I was super excited about it. I couldn't get further than 3% of the way in. I just realized it was not for me. Now, I don't share arcs except with my husband, but most of the time he doesn't read the arcs until after the book has already come out. But this particular book sounded like something that both of us would like. So I went to him and I was like, what do you make of this? Am I the problem? Is this? No. He got 4% of the way through it. So I had to reach out and tell them, I'm so sorry. I can't do it. I hope that there are people out there that read this book and enjoy it. It just wasn't for me. Next, we have Twisted Love. This is a soft DNF for me because it was the 3rd audiobook that I had ever listened to, and it was just not doing it for me. I wasn't connecting with the characters. I found it to be really boring. That said, it was the 3rd audiobook I had ever tried listening to, so maybe I just needed more experience with audiobooks. Maybe I would feel differently reading the physical book. So it's a soft DNF. I'm not completely ruling it out. I may come back to it. Then we have 27 Minutes. This one was just, I listened to this one as an audiobook as well, and I was maybe 25% of the way through it. This was a defining moment for me as a reader because I will normally decide to DNF a book a lot sooner than that. This was the furthest I had ever gotten in a book and decided, you know what, life is too short to read bad books. It's not worth it. I had no idea who any of the characters were, why they were important. I realized I would have to go back and re-listen basically to the whole thing. And I was like, you know what? I just don't care that much. So I still plan on reading some reviews that have spoilers just so I can figure out the mystery, but I just did not care enough to go back and re-listen. Moving on to my 1-star reads. There were only 2 of them. The first one was The Hunt. This one, honestly, it came down to a bad choice on the writer's part. The writer's first language, I believe, is Hungarian, and it seems like she wrote the book in Hungarian, did all of the edits in Hungarian, and then just put it through a Google translator. A lot of the things just don't translate well, and it feels like it's very sloppily written, and I feel like that was a really unfortunate choice on the author's part. I would be interested to hear people's opinions of it that maybe read the original and see if some of the nuances carry over, but for me it was a 1 star. Then we have How Much To. There are 2 books called How Much To. The first one is 2TO, the second one is the number 2. The second one is 1 star. This is one of the very few books that I've ever read in my life that I genuinely wish that I had not. I get shock factor, I get twisted endings, and for the most part, I love them. Not when they involve animals. That's all I have to say about it. This was a horribly written book. and it's not just the content, it's just everything about it. I wish I could give it 0 stars. The first book was not much better. Moving into 2 stars, how much 2? Was 2 stars. It wasn't as bad as the second one, but it wasn't that much better. Unfortunately, I've seen a lot of really negative things about the author, but the other book of his that I read in 2023, and it was okay. And it was enough to make me want to read more of his work. And now I'm wondering if that first book of his that I read was the fluke, and if this is just an ongoing problem. Next up, we have Satan's Affair by H.D. Carlton. This one was incredibly disappointing because I read Does It Hurt by H.D. Carlton and loved it. So I was so surprised that this one ended up being 2 stars, but it felt sloppy and overall just not worth the time it took to read it. Then we have Solitaire by Alice Oseman. I was shocked. Okay, this was a novel set in the universe of Heartstopper. I loved everything related to Heartstopper, and this novel follows the main character of Heartstopper. It follows his older sister. It was really poorly written. I did not connect with the character at all. In fact, I found most of the characters to be really annoying. And then it's taking place at the same time as things that are happening in Heartstopper that are really big, and they're just never mentioned. And I'm just like, no. I am so sorry. Just no. I have to very carefully move my giant stack of books. Why is talking about books so exhausting? Come on. Okay, next we have The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. I listened to this as an audiobook even though I had the physical paperback. I talked about this one before. I feel like maybe I needed to read and listen at the same time. Maybe I'm just not a dark academia girly. Either way, it had its moments, but just not enough to entice me into reading the rest of it. And finally, we have Faded by Katarina Martinez. This is actually the 4th and last book in the Coldest Fae series. The other books were not this bad. I was so disappointed when it came to this book because I loved the others. I was so excited for this one, and it just felt rushed. Like, I got to the end of it, and I'm like, this is a thin book, people. You had room. You didn't have to rush the ending. In this whole big battle that we had been building up to. Like, the whole thing resolves in like 3 pages. Honestly, it was one of the worst cases of like letdown in a book ever. There's like 2 pages of other books that this author has written, and I'm like, I will never read anything that you write again because I don't trust you anymore. I was so disappointed. But let's move on. Up first, we have The Locked Door by Frida McFadden. This was not Frida McFadden quality to me. It fell short. I remember finishing that book. This is the book that like I've rated the lowest out of Frida McFadden's books, and I could not believe it. I could not. I remember I was listening to the audiobook. I was circling around a parking lot at the hospital. I dropped my grandmother off for an appointment, and I remember just being floored, thinking, I can't believe I'm really about to give Frida a 3-star review. But here we are. Next, we have 20 Years Later. This one I probably should have DNF'd. The premise of it was really interesting. I was listening to it as an audiobook, and there were just a lot of unnecessary side plots that I don't think they added anything to the actual story of the book. And after going through and reading other people's reviews of it, I've come to the conclusion that, you know what, this is just a me issue. Even though I don't really feel like the book was worth 3 stars, I don't think it's fair to give it anything less because I just think the author's not for me, and I can admit that. The same goes for The Last Love Song. This was cute. It was sweet. It definitely had an interesting storyline. I think the way it was presented was so fun. Our main character is going around getting to know her late mother through a series of basically scavenger hunt type of clues in the place where she grew up. But it's marketed as kind of like a YA romance, and that honestly kind of takes a back seat to everything. I didn't vibe with it the way I needed to. I actually ended up rehoming this book. I had the physical copy and I rehomed it during a book exchange. I think other people will definitely enjoy it. I just don't think it vibed with me the way it needed to. Then we have Dead Girls Can't Tell Secrets. I vaguely remember the very last line of this book, and that's really the only thing I remember about it, so 3 stars was probably generous. Same thing with The Last to Die, just did not ring any bells, very generic. I don't regret having read it. I remember at the time thinking, okay, that was okay, it was worth it. I don't remember anything about it. Then we have Sometimes I Lie by Alice Feeney. This one was presented in a really cool way. Our main character is in a coma, and she is awake and she's aware of everything going on around her, but she can't communicate. And we're figuring out kind of what happened via flashbacks. And at the end of it, my mind was blown, but I feel like I needed to go back to the beginning of it and reread it because of the twist. You have your mind in like one frame of mind, and then you have to kind of reset and think of things in a new light when you realize that that's what the twist is. And I didn't appreciate that. Thinking, okay, now I've got to go back and so I can appreciate it properly. It just wasn't for me. Then we have Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. This one was not Riley Sager quality. Not for me. It felt extremely generic. I feel like anyone could have written this book, not Riley Sager. Good Lord. This is love, people. The book I need is at the bottom of this stack of books. Fireborn by Rosaria Munda. I've talked about this one as well. This one had its moments. It's romance, no spice. It's Dragon Training Academy. It had its moments. It was a mix of plot-driven and character-driven, and in the character-driven moments, I loved it. And then in the plot-driven moments, I was forcing myself through it. It took me so long to finish this book, and it really shouldn't have. So I just feel like it wasn't for me. I have the other books in this trilogy. I do plan on reading them eventually. I'm just not really in any hurry to do so. Moving on, I only had one 3.25 star, and that was Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay. It was entertaining enough. The ending was really weird and ambiguous. I hate that. If there's anything you need to know about me and horror books and movies, I hate an ambiguous ending. I'm not watching or reading it to come to my own conclusions. I want to know what you did with it. That's the entire point of this. If I wanted to use my own imagination, I would write it myself. And honestly, that took away from the entire experience, and that's why the rating is so low. Moving on to 3.5 stars. One Was Lost by Natalie D. Richards. This one was okay. It was strange, and ultimately it felt a little anticlimactic. 10. This one was actually really good. I just feel like it could have been better. I really latched onto the characters, but it felt a little rushed at the end. And at the end of it, I didn't like the twist. It just did nothing for me. We Were Never Here. This one was really good starting out, but then when it came up to the twist, it felt really anticlimactic and too soon. There were a lot of things that happened after the twist, and the momentum of it just kept going downhill. He'll Be Waiting. This one felt a little bit generic. I really did like the twist, but after that, nothing about it felt unique. The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. Ugh. I really wanted to like this one, but when I picked it up, I thought I was going to be reading a psychological thriller, as you usually do with Riley Sager. This one was definitely on the paranormal side of things. Not that I have a problem with that, it just wasn't what I was expecting or what I was wanting. Then it felt like a reused, recycled storyline. I'm just like, Riley, what the heck is happening to you? Blood Like Mine, this one I was super excited for. I actually pre-ordered this one with my library so that I could go pick it up when it came out. Let me just say, I'm glad that I got it through my library and that I didn't actually pay for it. It was not good. Creeping Little Things, I don't really remember anything about it. I don't remember the main characters' names. I don't really remember the plot of it, so 3.5 was probably generous. Moving on, 3.75 stars. I love y'all, but I am not going through this absolute disaster of a stack. This one. Right here, Tower of Dawn, 3.75 stars. It's not that it was bad. I know a lot of people don't like that book because they dislike Kale. I actually don't have a problem with him. I love him. I loved his storyline. Problem for me is, y'all know I like character driven. The entire Throne of Glass series is very plot driven. And with Tower of Dawn, we are entering an entirely new area. Completely new world building, new everything. It felt really slow. I am so glad that I did it as the tandem read with Empire of Storms. Otherwise, I don't think I would have been able to get through it. Next, we have 25 Days. This was an Advent style book that I read over Christmas. It was really cool in its presentation. You read chapter 1 on December 1st, and the events happening in chapter 1 are happening on December 1st. You read chapter 2 on December 2nd, the events are happening on December 2nd, and so on. It was a really cool concept. At a certain point, you could tell that things were only happening because they needed to happen on a certain day. The concept of it was really cool. The execution of it definitely fell short. Not only that, but we don't get an answer for why these things are happening to this family. And I did read the extra stuff like from the author and like the Q&A about like why certain things happen, and we're basically just left with a generic, this guy's a lunatic and likes torturing people, and that doesn't fly with me. I like answers and explanations. Next, we have Ghost Camera by Darcy Coates. This one was actually an anthology re-released. The original Ghost Camera was just a short story, and then she worked with her publisher. I'm assuming that Darcy is a she. Please forgive me if I have that incorrect. But it was re-released along with some other short stories. Some of them were really good, some of them were really not good. The ones that I liked, I really liked. And the ones that I didn't, I'm just like, I could take it or leave it. I will say it was quite creepy to listen to in a dark house by myself. Next, we have Just Kiss Her. This was okay. It was interesting in that it followed a lesbian who was pretending to be her best friend's girlfriend at his sister's wedding, and she ends up falling for his mom. It wasn't the book that like changed my life, but it was entertaining. Next, we have a book that I think is so overhyped. Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman. The first third of this book was amazing. I was crying. I was like, I can absolutely see why people recommend this book. And then they get out of the situation and everything after is just how they deal with it, which I get it, but it did not have the same impact that the first third of the book had for me. And I'm just like, now I'm back to not understanding why people keep recommending this book. The intensity and the quality just went down. Then we have Fangirl Down by Tessa Bailey. The narrator. I listened to this as an audiobook, and unfortunately this is going to be the reason that I can't listen to Tessa Bailey audiobooks anymore, because I just couldn't with this narrator. It was like nails on a chalkboard, except worse. So much worse. And I looked it up. Tessa Bailey keeps hiring this narrator, and I hate being negative about narrators. I just could not stand her voice. And I usually listen to audiobooks on 2x speed, so I slowed it down to like normal speed to see if that was the problem. It wasn't. I could not stand her voice. So I tried to separate my experience with the audiobook from the actual content of the book. And honestly, I feel like some of the things that I didn't like about the book, if it had been a different narrator that didn't irritate me, I maybe could have overlooked them, and that's ultimately what brought the rating down. Then we have Pretty Dead Girls. This one was interesting. It was entertaining, but again, I couldn't justify giving it 4 stars. It wasn't entertaining enough. Zetas Till We Die. I read this as an arc, and it was actually really good. I appreciated so much. It was written by, I believe, a BIPOC author. Almost all of the main characters were BIPOC main characters. There was a lot of culture and history to that. However, that's pretty much where the good things about it ended, because it's a whodunit murder mystery, and unfortunately there's only so much you can do with that, because you think, okay, it could be this person, well then that person turns up dead, and so on and so forth. And it really just kind of felt like ad-libs for, here's the outline for a whodunit mystery book, fill in the blank. I just would have loved to see so much more done with it. Next, we have Mortal Follies by Alexis Hall. This was really interesting in the way that it was presented, but also a little bit weird. It reads a little bit like you were trying to read Jane Austen, and you can tell there's a lot of influence there, but it's also told from the perspective of a third-party outside narrator, and that's a little hard to kind of wrap your head around, but it is a sapphic historical romance with witches. I thought it was fun. I thought it was interesting, but it was a little weird wrapping my head around the way that it's written. Then we have this. I have been damaged. I have been emotionally damaged by this book in ways I can't even begin to explain to you. And the entire time, I read this whole book in one day, and the entire time I'm trying to keep it together. My family is, life is still moving by, and my husband looks over. I am crying, trying to not just like sob violently into this book. And he's like, "Are you okay?" No, I'm not. It's the book. I have been damaged in so many ways by this book. And I will never forgive Kate Stewart for this. There are other Kate Stewart books that I want to read that I don't know if I can, because I don't know if I can trust her anymore. But the part that broke me, if you've read this book, you know the part that broke me. But it happens about halfway through this book, and the rest of this book just goes downhill. I don't like the characters. The ones that happen after, I don't like it. No, not in my world. I'm still bitter, if you haven't figured that out. Let's move on. 4 stars. First up, The Christmas Swap. This one I read just recently. This was one of my last reads of 2025. Actually, I think this may have been my last read of 2025. Ultimately, I gave it 4 stars because, again, we have the trope of best friends pretending to be together, fake relationship. One of them's gay, one of them's not. He doesn't want to show up to his family's holiday party alone. His date falls for his sister. His sister is so freaking annoying. And I'm like, okay, I can partially understand, because I was a little bit like that 10 years ago. The sister was just so incredibly annoying. And if she hadn't been, this would have been a higher star rating. Kingdom of Ash. I know. What can I say? Do not misunderstand me, okay? I was on the same emotional roller coaster. I was crying. The big, death was actually spoiled for me. I didn't know the details, but I knew that something happened. So maybe that took away from some of the impact for me, but it was a lot going on. Even though my biggest rule for rating a 5-star book 5 stars is that I have to feel something. I felt plenty of things. There were too many pieces of it that I just wasn't happy with. Next we have Sorcery and Stagecraft by Kristen L. Hamblin. I absolutely love this author. She writes amazing YA clean romantic fantasy. I read her Fated Born series in 2023. It is one of my favorite fantasy series, even though it's YA. This one, I still loved it. I just didn't have the same connection that I had with her Fated Born characters. Now, book 2 will come out in 2025. I am definitely looking forward to it. This was super cute. I feel like a lot of people will find this one a little easier to wrap their heads around than Fated Born. I just tend to prefer a little bit higher fantasy. Next is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. I've talked about this one before. I actually listened to the audiobook of this, and I highly recommend doing so. It is narrated by Jeanette herself, and hearing her very vulnerable story in her voice and her own words, it does something to you. If you've never read a memoir and you grew up with iCarly or anything like that, I highly recommend this book. Next we have Taken, Stolen, and Marked. These are the first 3 books in the Coldest Phase series. I've already talked about Fated, which was the 4th one that was really disappointing. Each one of these was 4 stars. They are short, quick reads, super interesting. I really loved the premise of these. I really wish, I wish I could get in contact with Katerina Martinez and be like, hey, can you rewrite book 4 and give us the ending that we all deserved with this, because the math ain't mathin', okay? These were amazing, and then book 4 was just did you have a stroke in the middle of writing this? Or it honestly felt like she just gave up. She was tired of writing the series, and she's like, I just want to be done with it. And gave it whatever ending and just left it there. But these were amazing. You just might have to get a little creative with your own ending, because the 4th one was a bust. Next we have 6 Months Later. This one was interesting, actually. A girl falls asleep in class and wakes up, and 6 months have passed. I read this pretty early in the year. I don't remember a ton about it. I do remember in the moment being completely sucked into it. And I do remember absolutely loving the male main character. Even though it's a mystery thriller, it's not like a romance, I do remember loving the male main character. The Finish Line. I can't get over that death in Exodus. That's why I couldn't give it more than 3.75. This one really shouldn't have been 4 stars, because the couple in this book, they don't belong together, okay? That's just not in my world. I can't get on board with it. but every time I read a chapter from that character's point of view, the more I understood and the more I liked them. I just don't like them together as a couple, but I really did enjoy getting to see some of the backstory. In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. This one was so fun to listen to around Halloween. I loved this book. I honestly wanted more of it. Take the Lead. This is a Dancing with the Stars inspired romance. If you like Dancing with the Stars, you're gonna like this book. Our dancing pro is partnered with a survival wilderness reality TV star, and kind of opposites attract. It was really cute. I love Dancing with the Stars, and it was really interesting. I feel like the author either has worked in that industry before or knows someone that does, because there were a lot of questions that were answered. Home is Where the Bodies Are. I enjoyed the plot twist of this, but I definitely wanted more from it. You're a Mean One, Matthew Prince. Now, the problem with this one is the author did a fantastic job of setting up a really unlikable character and made me hate this character a little too much, to the point that I almost DNF'd the book. I was like, there's nothing that the author can do now that's gonna get me on board with this, because I hate it. But he did. He got me back. Wonderful redemption arc, but he came, like, he was skirting that line. He came so close to me not finishing his book. Never Lie by Frida McFadden. Now, I talk down about this book a lot. It's not that I didn't enjoy it. It's that it is so vastly overrated. I do not understand why people rave about this book the way they do. It was good. It wasn't spectacular. God of Malice and God of Pain. Both were really good. I went into God of Malice having such high expectations, and unfortunately I was a little bit let down, but both of these were still really, really good. The Christmas Dog Sitters. This one was really fun. I listened to the audiobook as an art in September, and I was curious about why a Christmas book was being released in September until I listened to it, and then I got it. Because if you have one of those families, trying to listen to this or read it during the holidays was gonna drive you insane. But it was so freaking cute. Rock, Paper, Scissors. I have issues with this book. This book, nowhere in this book does it have any kind of content or trigger warning, not on the Amazon page to buy it, not anywhere, unless it is a user-submitted trigger warning. Trigger warnings are there for people who need them. I had a chemical pregnancy in October of 2022, and the main character basically has the same thing happen. I found myself crying in the gym, sitting in the locker room, hiding from people crying, because I was forced to relive one of the worst experiences of my life. The author did not give me the choice to make that decision for myself, or to decide if I was mentally in a headspace where I would be able to handle that. If it had had a trigger warning and I had been able to prepare myself for that, it would have been an easy 5 stars. Kill Yours, Kill Mine. This one, again, this one had a really interesting concept. It is a support group of women that their sisters were all killed by abusive partners. And within this support group, they agreed to take care of each other's problems. I just would have liked more of a climactic ending. The Boyfriend by Frida McFadden, really good, really interesting. Nothing overly special, but it was fun and entertaining to listen to, and I finished it in one day. Going by Coastal. This one I think is really cool in the sense of this girl has 2 options. She can stay on the East Coast or she can go to the West Coast, and she has romance options in both places. And it kind of is a why choose, in the sense of it's told in 2 parallel storylines. What would happen if she stayed? What would happen if she went? It's really fun. At the end, the ending chapter is like, epilogue. If you want this person to be on the other side of the door, go to this page. If you want this person, go to this page. So it was really fun. A little confusing until you realize that's what's going on, but still really fun. The Teacher by Frida McFadden. I see a lot of people say that this is very triggering for people. Personally, I don't get that. And the reason I rated this a 4-star, the ending doesn't quite make sense. There's a big plot hole that I feel like a lot of people overlook. Still really interesting, still entertaining. One Dark Window. I was absolutely furious at this book. I was furious at the ending. I did not want to keep reading. I did not want to read the second book because I hated how this one ended. But everyone told me keep reading. Trust the process. This absolutely is a trust the process book, but I hated the ending, so it keeps its 4-star rating. The Inmate by Frida McFadden. Again, really entertaining. I loved the twist ending, but a little generic. Moving on to 4.25 stars. Triple Sec. I get that this is not going to be for everyone. This follows a polyamorous polycule. I think it was really unique. I think that it was really original. I really enjoyed it. I 100% understand that it's not going to be for everybody. Bride by Allie Hazelwood. For the author's first foray into fantasy, I thought it was really good, but it did fall flat in a couple of places. Hooked. I don't get it. Someone explain it to me. I see so many people say, oh, this is such a dark romance. There's like one scene that's dark-ish. Other than that, I'm like, it's really not that dark. It was entertaining, but honestly, the only reason I got all the way through it is because of the constant references to Peter Pan. I love Peter Pan. That is like my favorite franchise within Disney. I love seeing all of the references, but yeah, it wasn't as good as people make it out to be. I think it's really overhyped. 4.5 stars. We got a few. Ice Planet Barbarians. I loved it. It was a little hard to follow because I was listening to it, and I don't really read or listen to sci-fi, but I really enjoyed it. The Last One Left. Oh my gosh, yes. I loved this book. It was I love those twisty, kind of haunting endings. Yes. Give me more. If I Stopped Haunting You, this was so freaking cute. I loved it. I did find the thing is, I found some of the characters kind of annoying, but they were cute together, so I was able to kind of look past it. And it was paranormal. Like, there was a lot of paranormal stuff involved. Like, it was just really well done. I really enjoyed it. The Gift by Frida McFadden. This is a short little holiday short story, but it was really fun for what it was. God of Ruin. Did I somehow miss God of Wrath? I feel like I missed God of Wrath on here because that was my least favorite out of all of them. So I'll put my rating for that here because it's not on my list. But God of Ruin, I hated Landon going into this book, and somehow I ended up loving him, and it's my favorite of the series so far. I haven't read the last 2 yet, but I am so excited to. The Ritual. I feel like this is really overhyped. Again, not to say that I didn't enjoy it, because I did. It was also incredibly long, but I will say I enjoyed that every time something new happened, it was something new that related to the story. It wasn't just more plot points to draw out and justify having a longer book. I'll Be Waiting. This was so good. This follows a woman who has CF. She has always been prepared to live a shorter life, and then she's in a car accident with her husband, and someone filming, instead of helping, manages to catch his last words to her, which are, I don't think I'll make this trip. I'll be waiting. And she has psychics coming out of the woodwork to convince her that her late husband really is on the other side waiting for her. This was so twisty. Holy crap. I loved it. I loved it. I will. I was about to say I will absolutely reread this Halloween time next year. I loved it. Hidden Pictures. This one was good. I'm not usually one for a lot of paranormal stuff. That said, I'll Be Waiting was paranormal. This one, I remember not liking the ending. I don't remember why, but I remember not being happy with the ending. Also, it can be a little bit triggering. She Started It. This one was fantastic. I highly recommend the audiobook. It has a full cast. I loved the characters. I loved the story. Yes, 1000% recommend this book. Corrupt and Hideaway. Both are 4.5 stars. Both I liked in different ways. I do think I liked Corrupt more, the storyline of Corrupt, but I love Kai, and so I loved Hideaway. Don't so much love his girl, but I loved him. And I did love the ending of Hideaway. I am hesitant to read Kill Switch though, because I hate Damien. Or Damon. I don't even remember at this point. Will I read it? Probably. I'm just not super excited to. Final Girls. This was actually my first Riley Sager book. I absolutely loved it. I think the ending could have been just slightly stronger, but I really loved it. And this is what started my love of Riley Sager. I think Riley Sager was actually my most read author of 2024. This winter, this is a short... Would I call it a short story? It's a story that goes alongside the Heartstopper graphic novels. I really love the story. It's really heartwarming. I loved all of the books. Pet Sematary. This was actually my first Stephen King book, believe it or not. I have seen plenty of things based on Stephen King books, but I had never actually read one. I get it now. I get why people call him the king of horror. I fully, like, he deserves all of the recognition that he gets. It's not just the film adaptations. The books are legitimately, they're so good. And I get it. And it was creepy as hell listening to this as an audiobook. I'm just gonna tell you that right now. Unfortunately Yours by Tessa Bailey. The first Tessa Bailey book that I read was Wreck the Halls, and I loved it. Then I read Fangirl Down. Didn't love it as much. This was a tiebreaker, and I loved it. There's something about Tessa Bailey books that just do it for me. And this was just super cute. And I really did love it, and I really enjoyed it. Caraval and Finale. What can I say? I'm a Legend girly, but I did love these. Going into Legendary, I expected to hate it because it wasn't following our couple from Caraval. I love this universe. I know that there's people that don't like it, but they love Once Upon a Broken Heart, but I loved it. I really, truly loved it. I know I've said I love YA. Just because it's not spicy doesn't mean it's not good. And these are so, so, so good. And that does segue into 4.75 stars, Legendary. If it had been spicy, it would have been 5 stars. Hands down. I needed more. I needed more from Legend, and I was really upset with the way that it ended. But head over heels, I am a Legend girly. The Haunting. This was a crazy ride. It follows a group of students that one of them, their father was a serial killer, and the following year there's a copycat. Gives total Michael Myers Halloween vibes. I was definitely here for it. I loved it, but the ending is so abrupt and jarring. I was like, what the heck just happened? And my husband, like, I was reading this book and I'm like looking through it, and my husband is like, are you okay? And I'm like, my book finished. And he's like, are you sure? No, I'm not sure. I don't think the book is sure. It was an interesting way to end the book, I'll tell you that. But that's why it was 4.75 and not 5. You Will Be Mine. This was my first Natasha Preston book. I absolutely loved it. I wanted a little bit more twistiness from the ending, but it was so good. And so well done. There is a reason that Natasha Preston is an auto-buy, auto-read author for me. Happily Never After. This was just really cute. I didn't feel enough to give it 5 stars, but I still really enjoyed it. Confounding Oaths. This is the sequel to Mortal Follies. Do you need to read Mortal Follies to read Confounding Oaths? No, technically not, but a lot of the characters carry over, and you'll already be accustomed to reading that way. Remember I said reading it was a little bit weird, but I enjoyed this one leaps and bounds more than I did Mortal Follies. And I kind of hope that we get more out of this universe from this author. But this one was just, it was so much more entertaining and I loved it. Flock. I loved this book so much. This one will live rent-free in my head forever. This was also the beginning of, it wasn't the beginning, but it was like the nail in the coffin that made me realize, okay, I really do like Why Choose type of books. So I prefer to live in my bubble of ignorance and pretend that Exodus and the Finish Line never happened. I also managed to overlook at least 2 books. Vicious. This was 4 stars. I liked it. It was entertaining. Nothing about it is ever gonna stick with me. I'm not gonna carry it around with me forever. And Scream for Us by Molly Doyle. This one I don't remember exactly what star rating I gave it, so I'll leave it here. When I was making my list, apparently I just managed to mess everything up. This one I read because of that TikTok viral audio, and oh, yes. The more books I read, the more things I learn about myself, and I should probably be in therapy. All right, 5-star reads and 6-star reads, my favorite reads of the year. Heartstopper, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. All of them were 5 stars. They were really good. I never expected to be giving graphic novels 5-star ratings, but here we are. They were just really good. I really enjoyed them, and I think they will play such a pivotal role in LGBT youth. Along the same lines, Nick and Charlie. Just goes with it. Empire of Storms. I did the tandem read with Tower of Dawn. Empire of Storms just had more of the characters that I liked. It had more action. It had more to draw me in, and I just thought it was so good. Survive the Night by Riley Sager. This one was so good. It takes you back to like the 80s where calling an Uber wasn't a thing. You actually needed to get a ride. I mean, Ubers are the same way. Like, you still need to get a ride with a stranger, but it's a little safer. in theory. This one was so good. The twists in this one were so good. The twist at the end was so good. Yes. Everything about it, yes. 14 Ways to Die by Vincent Ralph. This one was just really good, really clean, really easy to listen to and get into. And I love that it was kind of bringing mystery and thriller into a modern era and bringing it online. Princess of Air by Natalie Camerata. I read this as an arc. I absolutely loved it. Elemental magic, sibling rivalry. There was romance. It wasn't like super spicy, but it wasn't necessarily clean either. I loved it. And what I really loved about it the most is that it's book one of a series, but the big plot lines, it tied up nicely enough that I'm happy to wait because I read this as an arc. Who knows how long I'm going to be waiting for the next one. So I love that it was tied up nicely enough that I feel like I can wait for the next one. The Never King, The Dark One, Their Vicious Darling, and The Fae Princes. Absolute perfection. When I read these, I thought these were going to be my favorite books of all time, of the entire year. The spice is perfect. All of it is perfect in every regard. Just yes. Home Before Dark. This one was really cool in that it pulled a lot of parallels to the Amityville Horror. I love the parallels to horror movies, and I loved the twist at the end of it. It was such a wild ride. Does It Hurt by H.G. Carlton. I never in my life would have ever expected that I would be giving a book like this 5 stars, okay? I am severely galeophobic. Not the normal level of fear that one would expect. Like, everyone should have a healthy level of fear of sharks. No, that's not what we're talking about here. We are talking, I want to go cage diving with great whites just so that I can say that I looked my biggest fear in the face and did it anyway. But I know me, and I know that I would have a fatal, panic-induced heart attack before I ever got in the cage. And somehow, I still managed to give this book 5 stars. That's just how good it was. Fourth Wing, Iron Flame, perfection, both of them. Ward D by Frida McFadden. I love this book so much that I have the physical copy, but I somehow also bought it on Kindle. I don't know where my physical copy is, however. I think I loaned it to my grandmother. I absolutely loved it. The twist at the end of this was absolute perfection. It satisfies my deviously twisted mind. This is what I want out of thrillers. That book makes me ridiculously happy in ways that it really should not. Oh, yeah, someone's definitely gonna come throw me in a psych ward. Possibly Ward D. Butcher and Blackbird. It deserves all the hype that it gets, it really does. Despite all of the grossness, it's still just, it's such a good book. It's so fun. It honestly reads more like a rom-com with dark elements than it does a dark romance, and I absolutely loved it. Wreck the Halls, such a good time. I had a great time reading this book, and it's what turned me on to Tessa Bailey. The Wedding Witch. This was so cute. I read this as an arc as well. I didn't actually realize that it was connected to 2 other books that I have not read, and let me tell you, I don't feel like I missed out. Like, that's how good it was. I was still able to enjoy it having not read the other 2 books, and now I want to read the other 2 books. Ask for Andrea. This one was so good. It will make you think. However, if you have any triggers regarding death in any regard, do a self-examination, see where your head is at, and see if this is a book that you can tolerate, because it follows the spirits of 3 girls who are all murdered by the same man, and they all handle it differently. One stays by her body after it's dumped. She just wants her body found. Another stays with the family and wants to keep this from happening to anybody else. And then the third just wants her family to find her and know what happened to her. This is an incredible book, but it is triggers on triggers on triggers. So just make sure you can handle it. Lock Every Door. This one was so good. It immediately pulled me into the action. I was hooked. I needed to see what happened, and I loved it. Like, these are the books that I love. These are what make the Riley Sager and the Frida McFadden, like, this is what I want. This is what makes a good thriller book for me. The Party by Natasha Preston. I cannot possibly oversell this book. It is so good. Again, it's YA, but that's okay. It is so, so, so good. And the twist at the end, it's one of those where I'm looking up and I'm like, yeah, she got me. She definitely got me, and I love that. Dating and Dragons. This was so freaking cute, okay? My husband and I play tabletop games, not Dungeons and Dragons. We play Pathfinder, which very similar. I didn't play D&D in high school. I didn't get into that actually until I met my husband, but now it's like, I felt like I was reading about my friends, and it was really cool, and I wish books like that had existed when I was in high school, when my husband was in high school. I thought it was just so absolutely adorable. I loved it, and I really want to read the first one. This was the second one, but they're kind of standalone. So I really want to read the first one, which was Dungeons and Drama. Saving Noah. I struggled for the longest time with what to rate this book. I was like, do I give it 1 star or do I give it 5 stars? And I'm still confused, if I'm being entirely honest with you. This book, like, and the criteria for me giving it 5 stars is that I have never felt this way before. I hope I never feel this way again. I will never read this book again. Okay, it was so triggering, it was so dark, but at the same time, it's just like, it's so brilliant. It is so masterful. I was sobbing at the end. I was so messed up by the time I finished it. I will probably think about this book for the rest of my life. It is so masterful. It is so triggering. And to tell you the truth, I don't know where I fall on the argument because I can see both sides of it. Like, it just, wow. I don't know if I can in good conscience recommend it, but at the same time, I'm like, everyone needs to read it. I am so conflicted. Two Twisted Crowns. This book gave me horrible imposter syndrome because I finished it, like, I don't tab all of my books, but I definitely tabbed this one. I was like, why do I bother writing books when there are people like her out there writing books? This was masterful. I was crying at the end of it. I loved it so much. It is a masterpiece. The Vanishing Bookstore. I read this as an ARC as well. Just wow. I feel like this book was custom made for me. It follows a family of witches that were persecuted in 1692 in Salem, and they are under Giles Corey's curse. They keep coming back. They keep reliving the same life, you know, in different eras. But, you know, one of them is always the first to die. One of them always dies in the same way. One of them always dies before a certain age. And they're figuring out a way to access the full extent of their powers and break the curse. It is so perfect. I enjoyed every minute of reading this book. Ensnared by Rebecca Quinn. I don't know that I would call this dark romance, but I would definitely call it romantic suspense with dark elements. I will say, trigger warning palooza here, okay? 5 guys, 1 girl, they all share, and this is kink city, okay? And we are not talking 50 Shades of Grey like a blindfold and a whip. No, this is heavy BDSM, high protocol. Yeah, it's not for everybody. I'm gonna just say that right now. It is definitely not for everybody. You can definitely tell that the author has been in the lifestyle or knows a lot of people that are, because it is very accurate. Book 2, Entangled. Holy crap. Yes. Yes. Just yes. All the yes. All the yes. All the stars. Listen to the audiobook and thank me later, but again, be prepared for high protocol, very heavy BDSM aspects. I cannot wait for book 3. Did I read my own book this year? Why, yes, I did. Because I wrote book 2, I was doing edits for book 2, I wanted to do a reread of book 1 to check for continuity, and I was like, you know what? But I'm actually reading the book. I'm reading the book, I'm enjoying it, so it's going into my count. And yeah, it was 5 stars. And honestly, Entangled by Rebecca Quinn was 6 stars. That was 6 stars. So now on to 6 stars. So I had 4 6-star reads. Entangled. Royally Rearranged by Emma St. Clair. This was so cute. It was a cute, clean Regency romance, but it had me giggling and kicking my feet the whole time. I absolutely loved every minute of reading it. I want special editions of this book. I don't know if they exist, but I still want them. I want to meet the author. I want to have my book signed. I absolutely loved it. The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. This was so good. And it's so weird because even reading the description of it, having read it, and knowing it's a 6-star read, I'm reading the description and I'm like, nah, I'll pass. Like, that's how good it is. I've already read it and loved it, even though it's something that I definitely would never read. I read it because everyone and their mother was recommending it, and I am so glad that I did. And now, drumroll, the book of the year. This sets the standard for every book ever in existence. Lights Out by Nevessa Allen. This book is absolute perfection. I will accept zero criticism on this book. This has all the stars. This isn't even 6 stars. 6 stars is not enough. This has all the stars. You definitely need to read the audiobook. This is my baby. This is the book. I don't know if we'll ever find a book that tops it. I'm gonna leave a space here that I can edit out later if I forgot any books that didn't make it onto my list, because apparently I'm stupid. Here's what they were and what their star ratings were.